Welcome to Canada's Court. A little bit of a summer break that we just had. I mean, end of summer break, really, post Olympic summer break. But Coach O and I are back. We've got a fun episode today. We're going to be drafting our all Canadian NBA team for the 2024-2025 season. Basically, a fantasy draft of Canadian players who we think are going to have great seasons this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get too much into the details, Coach O, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I missed you a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, a little bit.
we had like a good thing going there. We were talking pretty much every day, every other day during the Olympics. So it's nice to be back. It's good to be back.
Yeah, and this one is a fun way for us to be able to slowly get back into things, right? Obviously, like we said, a lot of we were very locked in on the Olympics, and now we get this chance to kind of like in a way preview the season, but from a Canadian side, right? So, just for the listeners, what we're looking at is we're going to have our top 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these are players that we're kind of expecting to have pretty good breakout seasons, right? But there may be a lot of these players that, depending on which situation that they're in, the stock may fluctuate. And that is something
Mm-hmm.
that potentially we'll get a chance to relook at the end of the season.
Yeah, that's always a kind of fall. Just as even outside of basketball is kind of this kind of time of. Uh, I guess spring is more of a time of renewal. I don't know if fall's a time. It's a time of new things. People are going back to school. I know you're getting started with your hoops over there. How does it feel? As you're getting close to the NBA season and just basketball season in general. There's got to be some like I don't know, not quite butterflies, maybe butterflies. Well, I don't know. It's been a while for me. You tell me.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. It's an interesting time for players. It's an interesting time for coaches. For players, I think it's when you don't get the chance to play during the summer, you've waited all summer to be able to finally get on the court and get the chance to showcase what you worked on, right? So this is a great opportunity to, for some people to showcase what they did during the summer, and we know how valuable the summers are. One summer can change a player's trajectory of his career, right? Summers are so valuable. It's one of those things that you don't want to waste if you're a player. But as a coach now, you're on the receiving end of all this, where in a lot of situations you may have a lot of new players that are coming, right? So for some coaches, sometimes you spent the whole summer thinking about how you're going to play next year, but you can't really do that because you don't know who's going to come in. You don't really know what team you're going to be able to have, right? I know at the prep school level, a lot of coaches are still recruiting, right? So it's like it's a lot, right? The biggest part, what you want is you really want to instill your core foundations, right? What are, as a program, right? You hear that buzzword a lot, culture. What is it that you are going to, what do you stand for? That's the biggest part of what you want to be able to do, especially in this first month. It's an interesting time, and for me, anyways, it's fun to see that this is something that happens from high school all the way to the pros, right? So it's fun to see. It's fun to be around.
Yeah, there's certainly going to be players as we get ready for this draft, and just so people know ahead of time, like we haven't discussed. We usually, we have a bit of a chat before we record an episode, and we did this time, but we haven't talked about what our picks are going to look like. It's all kind of now we've got some guesses. I feel like we have a good idea at who might go number one overall. Hasn't been decided yet, but this is kind of like. You were talking about that development that comes in the offseason. I think we'll probably see a few guys on this list who you're kind of you or I may pick them because we're counting on a certain level of development. It's going to be fun to see. So we've got the ceremonial coin, the coin to decide who gets the first pick because
It
it's a
it
big
had
first pick.
it had to be a Canadian coin because you were on Canada's court, right? This is big.
Yep.
This hasn't been done before. I don't. All
There we
right,
go. All right, I'll give you the
ready.
honors.
Yeah, since
Do you
I'm
want to?
flipping heads or tails.
I'm gonna go. I've been watching a lot of The Crown recently. I've been catching up on the show The Crown, so I got to go with The Crown. I'm gonna go ahead.
All right, here we go.
Oh man, this is exciting. Let's
Ladies and
tell
gentlemen,
let us know. We can see here on the
You,
video
my
screen.
friend, you, my friend, have just won the first official
Oh,
coin toss
wow.
on
I don't
Canada's
know.
court.
I don't know if Vegas had some betting odds on that one, but I'm feeling pretty good about that. This is exciting, and we might as well just get started, right? We got a lot to go through here. We might as well
Let's
just
do
get
it.
started with the first overall pick in the inaugural Canada's Court All Canadian NBA Draft. I would like to select probably the easiest decision either of us could make. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, there's no. You had to know that was coming, right? I mean, easy pick, potentially going to be the could easily be the MVP of the season. He had, it wasn't the Olympics Canada dreamed of, but he still played great at the Olympics. He's coming off a great NBA season, and there's even the potential, like beyond MVP. We know he's a star. OKC's looking good this year, man. Like they were great last year, and they've just made some small additions, adding Alec Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein. And they still have so many like picks available that they could make some moves. I mean, if you're talking about if I have the potential to pick the potential team MVP, the league MVP, potential finals MVP, potential, it's possible. I mean, how could I not? How could I not go with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander?
That's again no surprise there. But you said some very valid points. I think the what the Thunder did in the off season was they addressed a lot of their issues and a lot of their concerns that they had in the past postseason run that they just had. Isaiah Hartenstein is somebody that doesn't necessarily need the ball, right? We know he's a great offensive rebounder, right? He's somebody that is going to provide a lot of value, not just on the offensive rebounding side, but just in terms of like physicality, because Isaiah comes in and he's able to play at the five, right? Where the Thunder struggled last year was Chet struggled to guard more physical guys. Well, now you're in a situation where he doesn't have to do that, right? So, in a way, it's not that the Thunder's ceiling got higher, it's just that their floor got higher,
Mm.
if that makes sense, right? So you're gonna have to find different ways to be able to attack this team. But again, Shea is putting himself in the conversation that I think he's again going to be in the top three for in the MVP race. And we talked about Caruso, right? Caruso is also somebody else that alleviates some of that pressure that may be there because you're talking about somebody who has playoff experience, right? Like somebody who we've seen him do it with the Lakers. So
Hmm.
again, the biggest knocks I think that the Thunder had last year was that one, they lacked a bit of size for them to defend physicality, and that they were young. And in this offseason, they addressed both of them, Phil. Both of those needs. Address both.
We talked a little bit about development right off the top there. I mean, we know Shea is so good. Is there any places in his game you think that he could kind of is there where do you think there's room for development for him at this point in his career?
Hmm. That's interesting because you're talking about now a player like if he's able to stay in the conversation for MVPs for like the coming years. What happens is that now when a player like Shea changes teams, the team has to adjust to what he does, right? So teams are going to want to build their team around him and cover his weaknesses, right?
Mhm.
Um, I think right now, if you were to talk about a deficiency, the fact that a player is very offensively gifted, and has so much of a load offensively. The only knock potentially that you would have to say is that he spends so much time on the offensive end. Defensively, he has to take the next step,
Mhm.
right? But now you're in a situation where we're talking about their team again. Like I said, they covered those weaknesses because now you can have Caruso, who can pick up on some of those things, right? Um, so it's like he's an interesting situation because it's like
Yeah.
it's kind of like the James Harden era where a player A player has maybe a certain deficiency, but because they're that good offensively, you have to keep them on the floor.
Mhm.
So I don't know if there is an answer to what area of the game he has to get better at. I think offensively, he almost has like almost a complete game. He could post up, pick and roll, one-on-one isolation. Like it's a complete game. Um, so it's a hard question to answer, but I do think that there will come a time where he has to strap down and get 2 to 3 defensive stops, right? So if I was to say an area where I want to pay a lot of attention to if he takes the next steps, it would probably be the intensity defensively. But we've seen him with goes a lot of stretches.
Mhm.
This and we saw him go in a lot of stretches defensively during the Olympics, right? When Canada had the opportunity to have a deeper roster. So it goes both ways. It goes both ways.
It does. It does. Well, I'll give you another tough question here. With the second pick, who are you taking? I kind of hummed and hawed over this one, so I'm very interested to see where you go. I have a guess, but we'll see.
Mm, we're probably on the same page. With the second pick, Coach O selects RJ Barrett.
That's what I
Gotta
thought.
go. I gotta go with RJ Barrett. I think for me, RJ's coming off a very promising Olympic run. Even though, like we said, Canada really wanted to be able to medal, right? Didn't get a chance to do that. But what we saw from RJ Barrett was that he was very consistent. He was one of our most consistent players. RJ was also what I found was very interesting was that he was balancing the number of threes that he was taking to him attacking the paint. And we know that in a lot of situations when coaches and staffs tell you to shoot threes, a lot of players will shy away from what made them great and made them get to that level. If you think back at when RJ was in college, getting downhill, attacking the paint, RJ was really able to put a lot of pressure on other teams. So this is a situation of him he showcased this summer that he has the right formula. So for me, I'm looking to can that translate into him taking the next step with the Raptors with a team that, unfortunately for us, unfortunately for us, is a team that is, really looking at that rebuild, right?
Mhm.
But not rebuild in the sense of getting players, but rebuild in the sense of how we're going to approach every game, right? So he has a unique opportunity for him to reinvent himself. And I find that that's very interesting and that's very appealing if you're RJ.
My only concerns with because I was thinking about if I had the second pick, who was I going to pick? And my only concerns with RJ that I was kind of worried about is like what is his ceiling compared to who else might be on this list for this season? Like I think last season we got a really good glimpse at what RJ could be on a different team. I don't know how much different we're going to see um, from him this season, and maybe that's enough. Like that's still really good. I think he's probably you could argue he's either the second or third best player on the Toronto Raptors right now after Scotty Barnes and potentially Emmanuel Quickly. But I just wonder if kind of last season we saw his ceiling and it took a big jump when he went over from the New York Knicks to the Toronto Raptors. We talked a ton about it on here, you and I. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious to see kind of where he lands there. Now we didn't discuss this beforehand, and I'll ask you right now: should we be doing kind of a snake draft here, or like should you be getting 2 picks? Because I feel like I kind of got a huge advantage at picking number one. What do you think? Should we go? You do two, and then I
Let's
do
do
two,
it.
or do you just want to go
Let's do
back
it.
and
Let's do it.
forth?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay,
Let's do it.
I think it's
Let's
only
do it.
fair. So
Yeah.
third pick goes to you.
Yeah. Third pick right off this. This is where it gets interesting.
Hmm.
Um he would have been a clear 2 if he hadn't you're laughing because you know where I'm going with this.
I
He
know,
would have
I
been
know.
he would have been a clear 2 if if it wasn't for like the injuries and everything, but I have to go with Jamal Murray.
Mm.
I think he has the ability to bounce back big. Um, I'm looking at a team that not only do you have Nikola Jokic, but you added Russell Westbrook. I think Russell Westbrook adds a certain intensity to that team, right? That in a way can complement him. Okay, what I mean by that is we we mentioned a lot on this podcast that Jamal Murray has the ability to really activate in the clutch, right? Really activate in the fourth quarter. But when you have somebody like Russell Westbrook who's able to play hard on every single possession, right? That in a way kind of, I guess, alleviates that lack of rhythm that you may not have, right? So, and then you have Jokic, who is Nikola Jokic, who's going to hit Russell Westbrook on backdoor cuts, who's going to go 2-man game with Jamal Murray, right? So Jamal's going to benefit from what I guess he didn't really have this summer. He's going to be able to play with, a big man he's able to go 2-man game with, right? Because, him being able to play with Nikola Jokic is a huge, huge, huge advantage that other players in this draft won't have. So I'm going to have to stick with Jamal Murray until proven wrong. Jamal Murray is going to be in my top three, man.
Yeah, I think that if I had gotten the second pick, I probably would have picked Jamal Murray there. I just think the best version of Jamal Murray is definitely the second best Canadian basketball player we've got right now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
obviously there's a lot of question marks there, so it's a bit of a risky pick maybe if you take him at second. But hey, you got them both, so that works. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I just think you make a really good point in that playing with Jokic is just such a unique experience that it's just so different. Even like, of course, Team Canada, lots of great players. You're playing with Shea, but he's played his entire NBA career with one of the best passers, playmakers in the world, and I have to imagine. Obviously, these guys are pros, so they're so good, and they could play anywhere at any time. But there's still some adjustment to how you play as an NBA team and how you play as a Olympic team. And then of course we've talked about potentially there was injuries there. But yeah, I just think the ceiling for Jamal Murray is so high. And it's not, if he can get healthy, and maybe that takes him some time, but if he can get healthy, he's a scary player. I think
Mm-hmm.
he's just so tough and such a fun player to watch. It will be interesting to see. You're right, how he fits with Westbrook. It's going to be interesting. I know Denver got a lot of flack this kind of offseason for letting players go, namely Contavious Caldwell Pope, and it'll be interesting to see how they do. They're kind of a big question mark going into this season, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious. Now's when the draft really gets interesting. I think.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
now, like that top three, I would have been shocked if you had anybody else in the top three. This is where it's about to get. Like I don't know. I think I might even be taking a bit of a. We're at the fourth pick, and I already feel like I'm going. Not reaching isn't the right word, but I'm going maybe off the board here with the fourth overall pick in the inaugural. I'm not saying that right, but I'm just going to stop trying. Within the Canada's Court All Canadian Draft, I will select Shaden Sharp of the Portland Trailblazers.
Ooh.
I mean, he had a great season last
Ooh.
season. Averaged 15 points. Unfortunately, got injured, so didn't get to play quite as much as we would have liked to watch. But I think
Wow.
he's just going to have so much. Oh, you're surprised over there.
Yes. 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 That he went that high. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, okay. I'm hopeful. I'm picking. This is my potential pick here. Like I just think he's going to have so much opportunity in Portland. They're still really finding themselves, and they've clearly, committed to him as a member of that team. I think back to when they still had Damian Lillard, and there was a question like, well, hey, they could trade this young guy Shaden
Mm-hmm.
Sharp and bring in some help for Lillard, and they decided to go the other way, and he was pretty much Sharp was pretty much off the table. Um, so I think they've invested a lot in him. I'm really interested to see, how he comes into this season. He's so explosive. He's got a great vertical. It's going to be fun to watch him all year. As long as he can, he can stay away from injury, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But you were a little surprised by this one. Why is that?
Yeah. No. Like, you know what? I think he's a player that I definitely had a lot of praise for in the past episodes, and I do think there is room for him, and that's what's interesting with these drafts, right? Because you're also drafting off of situation. You know
Hmm.
that Portland still has that blank canvas, right? And you know every artist likes a blank canvas. You have the ability to go into that situation and be able to potentially, create an identity for yourself. And I think there's a lot of value. So, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little surprised, but I could see why you picked him.
I gotta you gotta make it interesting here, but I do genuinely believe like as I'm kind of looking down the list of some of the other players, that are coming up here. A lot of them are a little bit more known quantities. Where Shaden Sharp, I think he's got that kind of potential to surprise some people this season. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be fun to watch. I think it's going to be really fun to watch. I think
That's a good one.
Portland games might be tough to watch in general, but if you're looking for maybe a cheaper ticket at some point, you're going to a Raptors game. That's not a bad one to go to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They'll definitely be fun to watch. They got some young talent there, so uh, we'll definitely keep up with them.
Now the question is because we're doing snake, but so do I pick again now? Because I
Mm-hmm.
do we go two picks? Okay, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing another. You're gonna be surprised
You're
again.
on.
I
You're
feel like
on. You're on. You're on. You're
I'm
on
go
that kind of time.
I'm going way off board. We're recording this Sunday night. I'm feeling good. It's a long weekend. I'm gonna go with the fifth pick. I'm gonna choose Zach Eady. I think
Okay. Okay. You're
another look
grabbing
of
the center.
surprise. Yeah,
Grabbing the center. Okay.
it's another situation and maybe even more interesting situation of opportunity, right? Memphis has a hole at center. They drafted him maybe a little bit earlier than some people expected. Certainly, if you talk to people a year ago, surprising. But I think he's got the chance to make a huge impact. I've heard people kind of compare him in terms of in NBA terms, like a bigger Jonas Valanciunas kind of type. I mean, we've seen his game. We know what he's
Mm-hmm.
like. I think there's a chance he could win Rookie of the Year. I think there's a
Mm.
very possible chance that he could come into Memphis, start or play considerable minutes. Um, he's not going to be the MVP of the team, obviously, but if that team can be healthy, and you're a playoff team, and you've got a rookie center who's getting a bunch of rebounds, and maybe probably he's probably not going to score a ton this season. I'd be a little surprised about that, but if he can get you like 8 or 9 points a game, and he's getting you maybe double digit rebounds, that might be a little bit of a stretch. I don't know, but I like the idea of having the MVP of the league and the Rookie of the Year on my All Canadian team here. So I'm going to go with Zach Edey. I think that's the choice.
Zach Eady, that's one of the question marks. It's also like how are they going to play him, right? So like
Mm.
that's something definitely that we need to keep an eye out for. But again, a lot of opportunities, a lot of potential at that position. Because again, when they lost Steven Adams, they needed to fill kind of like they needed more muscle, right? We talked about how valuable Zach Eady potentially could have been for us this summer. So this could be us being proven right, Phil.
I hope so. I like being right. I really enjoy that. It doesn't
Mm.
happen often, but I enjoy it.
Mm.
Um, all right, Coach O, that brings us to you. So in the draft order, the sixth pick, you've been surprised by my last couple. I
Mm-hmm.
do want to ask, like, where, if you don't mind telling me, where did you kind of have those two guys ranked? Were they on your top 10 list? Am I allowed to know? Is that too
Yes.
private right now?
No. So it's interesting. I had Zach Eady. I thought he was gonna go eighth overall.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting,
I thought he
interesting.
was gonna go eighth overall. Shaden Sharp, I've always loved, but because of the Portland situation, I thought he was gonna be in
Mm,
our honorable mentions.
okay, okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Well, you know
yeah.
what? This concerns me a lot because I think Coach O knows a lot more about basketball than me. So I'm already concerned about how this is going to go for me. But I'm glad you're letting me be a part of this conversation here and entertaining me. Let's go with your sixth pick. Who do you got?
Okay, so I got. Okay, so with my sixth pick, since I'm allowed to go two, my
Yeah, you got two
sixth
coming up.
pick right now, I'm going to go Andrew Nemhart.
Ooh, interesting.
I'm gonna go Andrew Nemhart. I think Andrew has shown, Tyrese Halliburton went down. He showed that he can handle the offense, right? Um, we know Indiana's going into this season. Again, the expectations are going to be that they want to make it to the conference finals. Like,
Yeah.
you can't hide it. That's probably what it's going to be again. Um, Also, this summer, the minutes where you can make the argument that Andrew Nembhard kept us afloat in a lot of games, in a lot of situations, I should say, because um, as we were bringing Jamal Murray slowly along, as we were ramping up towards the knockout round and that game versus France, you saw Andrew Nembhard coming in and handling the second unit, right? Um, the three looks good. The decision making looks good. Doesn't really turn the ball over, but he's someone that's able to come in and provide a lot of offensive production, right? Because of the situation that he plays in. We know Indiana is really up and down, right? It's run and gun. And for him to be able to come in and do that and handle, I think that is something that needs to be recognized, So really looking forward to him having um, a bigger run, a bigger step, or taking that next step for this upcoming season.
My only question mark there is, obviously he benefited a lot last season from Tyrese Halliburton missing some time. He started, I think, 47 games is what I got here. He started 47 games, so that's pretty great for him. Is he going to get that many starts this season? And how much is Indiana going to be able to play or is willing to play Andrew Nembhard and Tyrese Halliburton together? Because if they feel comfortable playing those two together and they get a lot of minutes together, then yeah, I think there's a big potential for him to kind of take that next step. But if he's pretty much just the backup guard, and doesn't really see that kind of closing minutes or get many opportunities to start, I do wonder if there's going to be much of a jump there. I think there could be some jump in efficiency, but I don't know how much more of a responsibility he's going to get if there's no injuries there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I'm gonna add another one to the mix, right? TJ McConnell is also on that
Mm,
team as well, right? So um, I think we're going to see a lot of minutes that they're going to share and they're going to
mm,
complement each other. That's the reason why I went with that pick, because I think like Tyrese loves to pass, and Andrew Nemhart, when he plays a passing point guard, he can score. So
yeah.
I think like there's a lot of like potential that can come into that situation. So um, I do think there's going to be a fit.
Okay.
So I'm expecting Andrew
I,
Nemhart to potentially come into the season and really have high number production for sure.
just talking about Tyrese Halliburton being such a passing player. How fun is it to play with guys who want to pass? I obviously at this point just kind of play rec basketball and
Yeah,
pick up
and
basketball,
nobody
so
and
it's not
nobody
too
passes
serious.
in rec basketball. Come on now.
but every once in a while, like it's been months ago, so that tells you how much people pass. But months ago, I remember a guy came in. He was just like passing up a storm. It was glorious. I never felt so alive. It was wonderful. So yeah, Andrew Nembhard certainly will have some fun playing with Tyrese, and kind of developing that relationship too. That's certainly a big factor there. All right, so that means you got the seventh pick. Where are you going?
Oh, this is a tough one. This is tough.
Good. I like tough. I
This
like
is
tough.
tough. I took. I got two guards.
Okay.
I got a wing.
Yep.
Yeah. So it pains me because there was a player that I really wanted, right?
Uh,
But for my seventh pick, I'm going to go with Dylan Brooks.
okay. Okay. This is about where I had him, so that checks out.
Yeah,
Why
yeah,
Dylan
yeah,
Brooks?
yeah. I'm gonna pick Dylan Brooks at 7. Um, Again, I'm hoping he can take the next step with Houston. Again, being with a young group, having someone who's seen as a veteran in this situation, I think it could be provide a lot of value. Um, Again, for me, the concerns is going to be he's going to play with a lot of ball dominant young players that are
Hmm.
looking to solidify their career, right? He solidified his, right? So
Yeah.
they're going to be looking. So how much in terms of getting all these young guys on the same page, him and Fred Van Vliet, um, how well are they able to do that? I think that will be the main question, because Houston is like within they're probably not going to say it publicly, but in that locker room, Houston is expecting to make it at least to the play-in, right? There's I was having this discussion with one of my friends, and it's in the West, there are 13 teams that legitimately think that they could make it to the play-in, that they could take the next step. So
Yep.
that one will be an interesting one to see, and I think Dylan Brooks has to be a big part of it, right? Because when you have all these young players and all that, like I wouldn't be surprised if Houston made a move, um, you know, at some point, potentially looking to trade off one of those young players. But you have all these young players that are going to come into the training camp, come in the beginning of the season, and going to try to establish themselves, right? So, your veterans are important, especially in a situation like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Dylan Brooks was kind of like the stable pick in this kind of range. Like you know what you're getting from Dylan Brooks.
Yeah.
He's kind
Mm-hmm.
of established who he is and what his career looks like. I think if we're looking back on this at the end of the season, and trying to judge who picked the best team, it's going to be largely based, I think, on how well the Houston Rockets did. Were they able to make the play in maybe a little bit further? Were they able to make it into the playoffs through the play in? I think if they're able to do that, and Dylan is a big part of that, and he kind of stays on the same trajectory he's been playing. I think that's going to look like a pretty solid, a pretty reliable pick. I
Mm-hmm.
can't fault you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that brings it to my pick. This is the eighth pick. We're in the eighth pick now.
Eighth.
Is that
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Those are your final two picks.
Oh boy.
As of
Oh
right now,
wow.
you have
Oh.
Shea, you have
Hmm.
Shaden Sharp, and you have Zach Edey.
It's a lot of youth.
Yeah.
I think because it's a lot of youth, I'm going to have to go with someone a little bit more established here. And another member of the OKC Thunder, I got to go with Lou Dort. I think he's just, once again, you've got a player who's on a championship level team. We've seen, how important he is to OKC, how important he is to Canada basketball. Obviously, his stats are never going to pop off the page for you. If this was a fantasy draft, it would be a bad pick. But he's so like a fantasy basketball draft, like numbers wise. But if he can defend like he's been defending, if he continues to be that kind of enforcer now, able to play with Caruso, who's also a great defender, like it kind of in some ways maybe eases the burden or changes where he gets assigned a little bit. Just makes OKC a better team, obviously, as we already discussed. But I think that's kind of like the stable player. As I got reached a little bit, took some younger players. I think I got to go with the Lou Dort, who and still think there's some room for development. I think as he plays with even better players, I think that makes his offensive game better. Just because he's a player who benefits from having talented guys around him. So yeah, have to go with Lou Dort there.
I think Lou, I agree. I think the situation that Lou's going into for this season, Thunder, you got to expect that they're going to be title contenders. That's number one. I think something that's maybe a bit more low key that people don't really talk about is the addition of Caruso in a way alleviates him having to guard the best player all the time, right? There's more defensive, I'm gonna say, versatility that they're able to
Hmm.
deploy on teams, right? So that adds a lot of value because now maybe he could stay in the game a little bit longer. Maybe now the legs are not as tired at the end of the game, and he can make maybe a bit more catch and shoot shots, right? Um, so there's different options that adds onto it. And again, thinking about a lineup where they have Shet, Lou, and Caruso. That's a pretty solid that's a pretty solid defensive lineup. I don't know what you think about that.
I really think if I was to pick who I thought from the West would be going to the finals right now, I'd be picking OKC. I think
Mm,
what we just talked about. That kind of depth, the defensive ability, having a superstar like Shea. And there is still the potential that they make a move. I don't know how likely it is. They've kind of held pat, but they've got a ton of picks. So if they decide, they're halfway through the season, they're cruising along, but they see another weakness that they feel like we just need to tune this up a little bit. They have such ability to make a move. I mean, if they see a player that they want, it's going to be easy for them to get it. I think, right? You just say how many picks. Now they're going to negotiate. It's not just going to be here's 10 draft picks. But they're going to have if they really want that player, they're going to be able to get them. So I think OKC's looking good. They're looking good. That brings me to my next pick. Before I make my next pick, I am stalling a little bit, but I don't usually do plugs on the podcast. We just kind of keep rolling with the conversation. But I do got to show off. I'm wearing the new
Mm-hmm.
Canada's Court shirt here. I think last episode I had on the hat. I've got the hat as well here. This one is actually it's got Coach O's name on it here. I'm just waiting to hand it off to him. And we
Aw.
even have a Coach O not Coach O mug, Candace Court mug. I'll get a Coach O mug
Coach O
later,
Mug.
but this is
Coach O Mug would have been crazy.
next time I make an order, we gotta get one of those. But I think this is my favorite. It looks pretty clean.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, they're not available for sale right now. But maybe someday, folks, if there's interest, let me know. I'm also very curious. I would plug this at the end, but I do want people to leave their comments. Like, I'm for this episode more than any. I'm very curious where people are ranking some of these players. If they feel like they probably feel like I've reached a little bit, but if they feel we're doing okay, who they think's got the better team, I'm very curious about that. And of course, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But I gotta make a pick here. Oh, I'm between two players right now, and
Mm.
this is tough. I really don't know. I like this better than if I had the next pick, but I gotta go with. Oh, I think I'm gonna go with Brandon Clark. I think
Mm.
he's going into his sixth season. Another player that's coming back from an injury. He just came back at the very end of last season. Came back from a torn Achilles. I think he's a great player. He's another one of those players where, kind of like Lou Dort, he's not going to put some eye-popping stats out for you. You're not going to be amazed. He's not going to jump off the Memphis Grizzlies stat sheet. But I think the Grizzlies are another one of those 13 teams in the West that is going to be fighting for a playoff spot. Um, when he's been healthy, he's kind of got this, like, almost Draymond Green-esque game to him. Like, he's a great defender. He moves really well. I think there's a lot of potential for Brandon Clark. He's a player I've liked a lot. I kind of would have really liked. I think he's talked about in the past of potentially playing for Canada. I would really love to see him in a Canada jersey. I think he's a lot of fun to watch. I'm a little bit biased because I interviewed him a few times going up to the draft, just getting ready for that, and he was great to chat to. But I'm going to go with Brandon Clark here. Was he someone on your radar, or was he more of in the honorable mention zone for you?
Definitely honorable mentions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think, again, we talked about situation, right? There's a big question mark on what they're going to do, right? When
Hmm.
he was healthy, he was really good for them. We remember, like, when the Grizzlies first popped up on the scene with John Morant, Brandon Clark was a big part of that. They had Dylan Brooks as well, right? So that team has changed so much. So I'm very interested in seeing how what Coach Jenkins is going to do with them coming season. But again, he's a really good player, so I think I'm hoping for the best, and I'm hoping that he's able to put it together for this year.
I think what I really like about him is his versatility. Like, I think whatever Coach Jenkins wants to do, he can kind of use them in whatever lineup they're going for. So I'm hopeful. But that leads us to your final pick, the final pick of the Canada's Court All Canadian Draft. Let's go through your team here again. So you started off with R.J. Barrett and Jamal Murray. Then you went to Dylan Brooks. Is that correct? And then you've also got Andrew
No,
Nemhard.
Andrew Nemhart at 6 and Dylan Brooks at 7.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. There
now
we
I
go.
need I need a center. I need a center. It's
Yeah, this
interesting
is tough.
because it's interesting because you never know because of what the situation basketball wise is going to be, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so I'm going to pick this player and then I'll explain why. With the 10th pick, I have to go with Kelly Olynyk because I
Yeah.
think Kelly is going to be somebody who is going to be relied on as a steady presence. We know his shooting ability, we know what he brings, we know his professionalism and all that. Yeah, and this kind of leads us into our honorable mentions a little bit because the
Yeah.
reason why I chose, so I was torn, you know, as a center, I was torn between Kelly and Dwight Powell. Um,
Mm.
I just think that Dwight Powell in Dallas right now, I think there's a big logjam at that position. I
Yeah.
think the reality is they like Derek Lively a bit better. So it's I just had to choose the person who's gonna play.
Yeah, when I made my list, I kind of ranked my top 20 just so I had all my ducks in a row here. And Dwight Powell was a player that I kind of had higher up for a while, but then as I looked at things a little bit more closely, I kind of realized what you realize in that like they're going to prioritize Derek Lively. He came in, he was great for them in his rookie season. Of course, they want to play him more. And they also traded for Rashawn Holmes last season. So his pathway to minutes and you saw last season was kind of one of his like his minutes were at a low his lowest minutes since his rookie season. Yeah, it's just a tough rotation there for him. But Kelly Olynyk, you got to think is going to be getting minutes this season. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
Raptors have Jakob Pertl. I think there might be some concerns that Kelly gets either moved or they favor youth over him. But I think right now the Raptors are kind of favoring more you know, it is about youth, but they're also thinking a lot about fit and what fits around Scotty Barnes.
Mm-hmm.
And Kelly
Yeah.
Olynyk is a player that fits around Scotty Barnes.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. But just for the listeners, you mentioned Rashawn Holmes. It's Gafford that you meant. That Gafford that they
Oh
sent over.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mix them
You're
up all the
right.
time. Don't worry about it. Just
Because they were there.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Wrong,
yeah,
wrong
yeah,
former wizard I got there.
yeah, yeah,
Thank you,
yeah.
thank
No,
you.
for sure, for sure.
I
Um,
even had Daniel Gafford in my notes. Good call. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. So I think, and even like I was even looking at the situation for the Raptors right now. Again, Kelly's able to make a lot of those top of the key threes where he's able to kind of like set screens and pop out to top of the key, and his feet are set. And with a bit more space in the NBA than in the Olympics, right? So it's a good situation for a player like that. I was even thinking about how likely, dependent on the kind of rotation that the team wanted to go into, right? Expect the Raptors to continue with the same kind of core guys that they had that you mentioned before with RJ, RJ, Emmanuel
Quickly.
Quigley,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Scotty, right? Expect that, right? So I was just trying to think about what the fit around those guys would be.
Hmm.
But yeah, when you get to that point of the draft, that's really what it's about, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'll talk about some of my honorable mentions too.
Mm-hmm.
One of the players I kind of really hummed and hawed about was Andrew Wiggins. Last year was kind of, I mean, not kind of, it was his worst season as a pro player, dating back to his rookie season, and just kind of a little surprising, obviously, because he was just so like not far off of winning a championship with the Golden State Warriors and being such a crucial part of that, right? But he kind of, I mean, I don't know everything that happened there, but certainly a bit of a drop off with the Golden State Warriors. So I kind of struggled to. He was just on the edge for me. He was just on the edge for me.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of these players, right? So like
Hmm.
I'm even thinking about Chris Boucher, who I really like, who's a good
Hmm.
friend of mine. Again, it's about I don't know how big of an impact or how big of a runway you have. Like it's one of those situations where it's like he Chris is gonna have to come in, defend at a high level, and make a lot of catch and shoot threes. Right? That's literally what's gonna have to be. So a lot of the situations that certain players have, um, it's going to be determined in the first few months of the NBA season, depending on how they approach or how successful of a summer they've had.
I'll give one more kind of honorable mention that kind of stood out to me as I was going through the list there. Delano Banton. He got traded midway through the season last
That
year
was
from
one of
Boston
mine.
to
That was one
Portland.
of mine. Mm-hmm.
He averaged 16 points a game in Portland. I didn't realize. I mean, I'll be honest. I didn't watch a ton of Portland Trailblazers basketball by the end of the season,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if I'm alone in that one. But he was putting up a lot of threes a game. He put up six threes a game. That's another place where they've got some. Like you said, it's a clean slate. I think he's someone to at least keep your eye on. Right, it didn't work out for him in Toronto. It didn't end up working out in Boston, but I think there's some opportunity for him there.
I agree. Delano Benton was for me at number 9. I think
Oh,
there's opportunity in Portland. Um, Again, you have a lot of wiggle room to be able to expand and showcase your game in that situation, right? So when we're looking at players like Delano Banton, Shaden Sharp, right?
hmm.
Scoot as well, Scoot Henderson, right? Like there's a lot of room for these guys to be able to expand on their game. So that's a good one. That's a good one. I think that's definitely somebody to be able to look out for.
Okay, I'm glad
I
you
mean,
finally said one of my calls was good. I was getting a little
no,
nervous after all the ooh that pick like that. I was getting a little
yeah,
worried. Okay, so that
I'll
makes me
give
feel a little bit better.
yeah. For me to close off, I'll give you 2.
Yeah,
All right.
give me two.
Benedict Mathurin, I think
Mm,
if he wouldn't have gotten injured, we could have seen him this summer. I think he would have helped a lot in the playoffs because he's such a high level defender. The thing with him, and it's the Montreal guys. I got to plug my Montreal guys.
yeah,
Is
of
it
course.
you know what I mean? Like we compete, and that's the thing. The compete level is very, very, very high with him. Doesn't like to lose, right? So it's like um, anytime you're able to compete and translate that to the defensive end, you always give yourself a chance, right? So the catch and shoot jump shot has to evolve in the next few years. But it's somebody that, again, because he's able to defend multiple positions, in some situation he can go 1 through 4, right? So because he's able to do that, um, there's a lot of room and there's a lot of opportunity for him to be able to showcase his talent. And my last one is Chris Duarte, man. I think
Okay.
Chris Duarte came into the NBA as a 22, 23-year old rookie, right? He's seasoned in his own right. Okay.
Hmm.
I think right now he is going to play for the Chicago Bulls, right? So we know how open things are, even though a lot of people may mostly feel or think that Josh Giddey is going to be like the main and only person, there's going to be opportunities for Chris Duarte to be able to do some stuff with the Chicago Bulls. So I think it's an interesting situation for him because this is a team that is just looking to have an identity for themselves, right? And we know that in creating an identity, the guards are a big part of that.
Yeah, and especially when you're a team that's trying to find itself, you're not going to turn your nose up at someone who starts catching your eye, right? Like if he can take his game to the next level and kind of star a bit, then they're not going to be like, yeah, but we wanted Josh Giddey to be. No, they're going to be totally okay with someone else. They're in soul searching mode, so they'll take what they can get in that point. Whew, okay, so that means your final team. Let's go through it here. So your final team is R.J. Barrett, Jamal Murray, Andrew Nembhard, Dylan Brooks, and Kelly Olynyk. And I ended up with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Shaden Sharp, Zach Edey, Lou Dort, and Brandon Clark. Okay. Whew. That's I feel like I did get a bit of a benefit from winning that coin toss. I think the Shea factor is it's kind of hard to argue with, but it's going to be I'm curious to see. I really do want to know what people think about these two teams. Who won? You can leave it in the comments. I'm very interested to know.
Absolutely. This was a lot of fun. I think, we gave our listeners a lot of things to be able to look forward to going into the NBA season. But yeah, these things change. They constantly change. And to be
Hmm.
honest, there may be players that we just talked about in our honorable mention that may just come in and surprise us and make us look like
Totally.
like we don't know what we're talking about. So
Like in a month into the season, right? Like if we
right,
redid this draft, in November, it'll probably look a lot different. Now some of them will be the
probably.
same. I think like when I went through it, like that top three is the top three. I would be
Yeah.
surprised if anyone
Hmm.
kind of supplanted that. But after that, there's a lot of room here. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. We're gonna be talking about it. We're not going away. We're basketball never stops here on Canada's court. Coach O, when do things really kind of ramp up for you and your coaching? When does it start to really get? Is it now, or you got a little bit more time, a little bit more calm before the
Yeah, so
storm?
you see with school, right? We're starting off school. Usually, in high school, school would be like the first month where you'll
Hmm.
have like training camps and in some situations there's tryouts, right? Um, but games usually will start in October, right? So I think October is where things really start really getting ramped up. But yeah, it's an exciting time. I think again, you go from being away from people for the whole summer, and now it's officially like the first week of school for a lot of people. So, you know, we don't go to school anymore, but we remember how fun, how nerve wracking the first the first day of school was. So, happy first day of school to all our listeners, man.
Yeah, happy first day of school. Yeah, it's been a while, obviously. What was interesting for my school, I went to a very small private school in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and we kind of had there were three sports that our school did. We did soccer, we did basketball, and we did volleyball. But really, some people will differ, but really the main sport at the school was basketball, and everybody played basketball. So soccer season was really get your cardio ready for basketball season, and volleyball, which was after basketball, was okay. Now have some fun now that the serious
Yeah, show
basketball is
your
over.
bounce.
Yeah, exactly. Although we had, I remember the coach, obviously a different coach for the volleyball team, and he didn't like it that we kept trying to like put layups into the backboard with the volleyball. He was getting annoyed. He wanted us to actually practice volleyball. But man, basketball never stops. I don't know what to tell you. Basketball never stops. It can't. If there's a hoop and there's a ball, I'm gonna try and put it in. Even though I usually fail, I got to try.
No, absolutely. It's the fun thing about our sport. So accessible, so easy to pick up on. So again, we're really excited. We're really happy to be around this game for sure.
Awesome. All right, Coach O. Thanks so much. And again, everybody, please leave your comments. This one more than any other one. I'm very curious what you guys saw, what you changed, maybe what your team would have been. Very curious to know. But either way, Coach O, thanks for coming on. It was great chatting with you.
Always a pleasure to be on Canada's court.